Good to be with you guys. How you doing today?
Good.
Full house and a bunch of people on the online too. That's great. All right. There's a few. By the way, there's a few people here from your home state, Amy. Did you know that?
Yes,
A few
I saw them
Californians
by
in
my
here?
office,
Yeah. Who's from? You gotta raise your hand from California. All right. You from California? What part?
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
I love that's my favorite golf course. I love
Ojai.
yeah, Ojai Valley Inn right
Yeah.
there. Who's been to Ojai? So I'm Cordy. I know you. Yes, there you go. Kim Cruz back there raising her hand. She loves it over there. You grew up in Ojai?
Yeah.
Wow. I'm surprised. Do you eat wheatgrass? I just want to make sure. I just did double check. Wow, I'm impressed. All right. See, I offended all of our Californians, John. I just said wheatgrass and Ojai. That's like part of the recipe, right? All right. Okay, so one of the things I've been looking at, and it's been, let me give you some numbers that I think are kind of fun just from the standpoint of the entire company. So last year we sold just shy of 7,000 homes. All right, wow. Which is cool. So congratulations to everybody, both Utah and California, that's combined. We sold $3.7 billion worth of real estate, which is obviously a huge factor for everybody. And then the third thing is that we paid just shy of 90 million, like 88 point something million dollars worth of commissions out. So I mean, kind of crazy like what you guys have done. So it's pretty impressive. And I think back, Rick saying like, hey, when we first met, for some reason, I always think about Amy actually and Jessica. My favorite example still is when Jessica left a corner office, looking over the Wasatch Front, Class A space, and all of a sudden, Jim, I'm watching her, and she's standing in a hallway in a cubicle in what Amy always says was the old ghetto Everest. So it's and I remember those good old days, Mr. Pearson? Do you?
That's where you first recruited back.
Yeah. Which time? Just kidding, dude. I know. We love that man. No matter where he goes, I love him. So, and he's killing it now. So, right, you got it all figured out now. You should be up here giving the lesson, right? The life's lessons. All right.
He just got engaged.
I know, he did. He did, actually, to our neighbor, which is really crazy. Yeah. Yeah, huh? Well, kind of a neighbor, right? Not too many houses away.
She doesn't live there anymore.
Well, no, yeah, she doesn't live there anymore. Yeah, that's true. That is true. So, okay. All right. So, two things. I want to start with this. Let's just talk about the market just for a minute. One of the things that keeps getting talked about is just like what happens, where's the market going? It doesn't matter whether you're on the lending side where Jim and Kelly and others are or it doesn't matter whether you're on the title side. It doesn't matter whether you, of course, most of us are on the real estate side from the buying and the selling of real estate and helping people do it. I just want to just give a quick reminder as to where we are from a place of economy. I heard you. Where's Crystal? You said how many home sales this year, or how many homes?
6 million.
Yeah. So here's just a couple of stats I think will be helpful. The U.S. creates 12 million households a year. Households. That doesn't mean I'm not talking structures. I'm talking households, meaning there's 12 million families that are created every single year in some way or some shape or form. On an annualized basis, there's actually only about 6 million homes that are actually built every single year. Right now, there is nearly a 6 million home structural place to live deficit annualized per year. Do you even know that? That's why you're seeing such crazy stuff. So then the question then begs to ask, and some of you have heard me say this and talk a little bit, but it's just a good reminder, because that scariness at the beginning of the year is going, oh my gosh, what's going to happen with the market? You look at lots of different things. The expectation is, give or take, it should be going up about 16% in home values. But as I was actually visiting with an agent today, I said, gosh, it's such a good market that it makes it kind of a difficult market. Has anybody found that out yet? Like it makes it kind of like, it's so good that it actually makes it so much harder. And so just as you start looking at the market and saying, wait, where is this market going? I would just want to give you a few maybe bullet points so that you can talk intelligently and also maybe have a little bit of mental reprieve of just asking yourself, where is this going? Or when the client says, I mean, how many of you said, I'm just going to wait until the prices come down? So the question then, my favorite question, by the way, in these scenarios is, well, could you share with me when that's going to happen so that I can position myself appropriately? Because the fact is that, is it not, are you not just a little bit blown? I don't care whether it's California or Utah. Are you not just a little bit mind blown of the activity? I mean, we went through COVID and all the different things and why it continued. It's something to think about, like what made it continue? Because you saw all this job loss. You saw hospitality go down into the tank. You saw people who owned restaurants or people who worked in restaurants, people worked in hotels, worked in the travel business. But here's the interesting thing. That group of people is not the common individual who's buying the majority of homes today. They never were before and they never were now. Because they have such a volatility to their income, they're typically a bank of people that are typically renting. So you start looking at just the industry as a whole, you start looking at the market as a whole, then what's going to keep it going? Just a thought though, before I get there, is just ask yourself again, what's going to happen if there was a terrorist attack? Heaven forbid, we hope that never would happen, but what would it do? It creates a greater supply and demand. We've seen that even when 9/11 occurred. So what happens if there's a huge natural disaster? Again, you can look at numerous places from New Orleans to Houston. When natural disaster occurs, it creates just, again, another deeper level of supply and demand issues that are a major problem. You start looking at, because there is so much consumption going on right now, we're seeing major supply chains. Again, supply chains are creating, again, a shortage, which creates, again, a greater supply and demand issue. Then you look at, even though we may not be completely independent on our own energy, the reality is we still have the energy, we still have the ability to consume it, even though we're not getting it here. Even if we weren't getting it here, it's still, there's a 6 million household shortage annually that keeps stacking on top of itself. It's the reason why you're seeing, cap rates the way they are, why people are buying investment properties the way they are, because of what's happening. There's such a housing shortage that is not going away. And then you start looking and say, okay, well, again, what could drop the market? What if interest rates go up? What if they go up even to 6 or 7%? What would happen? It still does not stop the housing shortage. Yeah, it might bring prices down. That's a different conversation. But we're in the business of selling homes, not necessarily too concerned about what the homes sell for from the standpoint of pricing. You may say, well, I'm concerned about it for my own personal well-being because of my own investments, but you're not concerned about it as to whether a home sells for $350,000 or $400,000. For you as a salesperson, what you're concerned about is, will the home sell or will someone buy it? So from the standpoint of the sales industry, right, rates will drive some pricing down, but it won't stop the market. So you have to sit there and again ask, what really could implode this market? We thought COVID, but then we somehow were able to keep afloat, and the economy kept afloat at some level, even though we saw different segments of it. But again, they weren't the ones buying houses. So the key thing is here, if I was to observe anything, if I was having a legitimate conversation with a client and saying to them, so what is it that's going to stop it and what's going to change it? And it's really only one thing. It's what I was talking. I know I've said this to a few of you before, but it's what I was talking when I was up at the University of Utah, speaking to them, to the MBA program. And I said, it's jobs. That's it. The only thing I'd be paying attention to if I'm you is jobs. It's not rates. It's not energy. It's not shortages. It's not supply and demand issues. It's not, whether things are coming into the country or not being able to get into the country. The issue is, are people employed? And if people are employed, people are going to buy houses. So the one thing I would tell you to pay close attention to is what's happening in the job sectors about job creation, job stability. And if that stays in place, everything else should continue. If it doesn't, and if people can't buy homes, then you're going to see some significant changes. But I have to believe that based on everything I'm seeing and everything that's going on, and just the rise of the economy, the tech sectors and everything else that's going on, there seems to be no reason that jobs would not continue. So any thoughts, questions to that? That's just a little side thing. We'll talk about some more stuff, but I just think it's important that you can talk intelligently, because the one question I know you got is, everyone getting like, well, I'm going to wait till the market changes. When is that?
Yeah.
No one knows. John?
Well, I just ran this off the numbers you give me. If home values are going up 16%, you buy a $400,000 house, you just made $64,000 for buying the house.
Yeah. Right. So go buy a house is what you're telling me.
I'm gonna buy a couple, yeah.
Exactly. Oh, I get it. So look, and is there risks? Of course there are, but again, the housing shortage, as long as you have a home, I have a big belief is try to get your properties as fast as you can to 50% loan to values. You know what? There's gonna be periods of your life where you're gonna leverage. I've leveraged everything. We'll never do that again in times past, but I've done that, never will again. But there's gonna be moments where you're gonna leverage maybe a little more of your life. And this isn't necessarily a financial lesson, but I can certainly say that there'll be moments of your life where you leverage your time. You're going to leverage your energy. You're going to leverage your resources, your economics. And there'll be a time, hopefully, that you can deleverage all of that. That's the hope that each one of you should have as you move through your career and as you're continuing to invest and buy properties and do the things that you're doing. So, okay, any other thoughts, comments on that? We're going to switch gears here. Kim, anything from you? You looked like you were going to raise your hand, but you might have been just scratching your ear.
But it's funny, I'm listening to you talk about rates to give it the fours, and I was my busiest when rates were at 8.5.
Yeah.
So it really, rates shouldn't be a thing because my busiest days is, we saw people paying 2 points at 8.5 and
Yeah.
we're still busy, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and you're seeing those home values which drive lending, which drive people refinancing, people take money out of that home to hopefully go buy another home. I mean, there's so many different opportunities that are out there right now. I hope that you're taking advantage of them. So, all right. So with that, let's switch gears just a little bit. Some of you, I told this story, but I'm going to tell it again. So those of you who don't know, I in the last 18 months, I had a major concussion. I think if you didn't know that, then maybe you have a concussion because you forgot, because I've talked about it enough times. All right. So I actually hit my head twice. Once wasn't enough. And in the process of doing that, I'll tell you, that was probably some of the most humbling moments of my life. The other component to that is that on last year, on November or the day before Thanksgiving, I found myself, having a staph infection that occurred. I found the culprit. It's my dog who scratched me. I should blame that on you, Alex, who provided that dog to my life, but who follows me around everywhere I go. Like, he is the coolest thing ever. I love that
You're
dog.
always posting on social
That's the only thing I
media.
care about. Even Mackenzie goes, "You have 5 kids." I'm like, "Yeah, I know," but he doesn't ever complain. And although on Christmas Eve, he took me on Christmas morning at 8:10 in the morning, he swallowed 5 frozen Rhodes rolls. And if you know anything about yeast in a dog's stomach, that is not a good thing. So I was at the emergency room with him again. So I said, I said, "Merry Christmas." That just cost $550 to have you throw up at a vet. So, but okay, so the day before Thanksgiving, after a wild time with Jess and Jared in Vegas, I decided that I'd have my staph infection on my arm where he scratched me kind of go a little bit crazy. And it expanded to where I had to go to the ER because I knew it was going to get worse. They gave me some antibiotics. Those antibiotics made my heart race a little bit. The next day, which was Thanksgiving, I went in there and had to get my heart checked because it was like racing at like 127, 130. And I was just sitting there in my solid fat burning ratio, space, but I was sitting there and that wasn't good. And then I went 2 or 3 days past that and I was okay. And then all of a sudden Sunday night, my staph infection started growing more. That night, they tried to admit me into the hospital. I said I can't because everybody had gone home, which I did sell my wife on the idea I would be fine. I just want everyone, she wants me to make sure I put that disclaimer out there. But then they tried to hospitalize me. I'm like, no, I said, my dog's at home. I'm not doing that. So then they put me on this regimen of twice a day with vancomycin, which is basically what they give to cancer patients and kind of kill every single thing in your system. And if you keep taking it, it'll probably kill you, but you hope to kill every bacteria. And it started to work. But 8.5 days into it, I go morning and night. I was down in St. George for, I was down there for like 15 days, but we were down there and I went 9 straight days into the infusion unit and I'd get an IV for 2.5 hours. Then at night I'd get an IV for 2.5 hours. Well, on the 8th day, I got what's called red man disease, which is red man, which is where you get flushed with all of the histamines from the antibiotics and you're getting an allergic reaction. Well, that next morning I woke up, and as I woke up, I had a major problem, which was my blood pressure went to 210/113. And so I was like in this complete daze. And I remember I kept waking up during the night, but what it was, I was having an allergic reaction to the histamines in the antibiotics. And so we went to the hospital. I did pick on Jennifer earlier this morning, which I feel I should pick on her again, since not all of you heard about that, but I'm pacing like a lion in a cage in the house, in the garage, I go out and she has not come out. I come walking back in and she's doing her hair. And I finally say, do you understand the magnitude of the problems that are happening here as my blood pressure is going higher as I'm getting agitated? And so she hustles in there and hustles and we go into the ER and so I went to the ER 4 times in 8 days. That was exciting. And so it was a really cool way to start or end the new year, which was a reflection on just a few things. And so I think there's 2 things that I just wanted to share with you today. One was just some habits and some rituals and disciplines that have helped me. And the one first thing that was just a reminder that I had all these expectations of what my holiday was going to look like. In fact, I can tell you on Christmas Day, I was so tearful that no matter what happened, in fact, Jennifer turned, she goes, "Are you crying?" I'm like, no. Well, you have like tears like on both cheeks, like right. I'm like, well, yeah, maybe. I mean, I just was so grateful. So just my first thing. This isn't a new thing for many of you, but here's a point for you. Exchange your expectations for gratitude. Here's the thing that I've realized is they'll have these expectations, right, in business to set all these appointments, to talk to all these people, to do all these things, right? And all of a sudden, as I'm going through that whole process, I start to realize that I get so agitated, so wound up, so hyped up, so stressed out, so whether fearful or anticipatory of like the future, that I find myself so agitated that I lose sight of really like what I'm trying to do. And I lose my sight of the moment, the present moment. So what I found over these years is that if I can just exchange those moments when I have such a high level of expectation of how something is supposed to be, if I could just exchange it for some level of gratitude, I find that there's this tremendous peace that comes into my life. And so I just would challenge you that as you move through this year, we're going to talk about a handful of just different habits, and I think things that I think will help you as you move through this year, but just take the time to be grateful. Take the time to recognize that sometimes maybe if you change your expectation for a gratitude, that you have a much more joyful life. That doesn't mean don't have expectations for high goals. It doesn't mean don't go try to make a ton of money. It doesn't mean not try to go help a ton of people. It just simply means don't get so wound up on the expectation that you lose sight of really who you are and that present moment, the joy that you can have in it. And if you'll exchange that expectation at times in your life for a gratitude, you'll find your life to be much, much better. And I can just tell you that through all the different highs and lows, that's been one of the most important things I've had to do, because I expected this, or I expected that, or I wanted this and I wanted that. And yet it's not the fact that I'm undermining myself. I've just found found in myself that if I don't exchange it, I find myself so wound up in disappointment and discouragement and frustration. And yet the fact is that it's not going to necessarily change anything, even if the expectation wasn't hit. So again, exchange your expectations for gratitude. Make that a habit in your 2022. A couple of things regarding 2022. So I was asking this question to Jennifer not too long ago. And I said, Jennifer, actually, don't call her Jennifer at home, by the way. I call her Jenny. And if you're around me on my phone, it's Jenny Bennett. But I said, Jenny, if someone came to you and said, my life is miserable, I'm totally overwhelmed, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I don't know what to do, what would you tell them? Of course, she's like, I'm not telling you that because you're going to critique everything I have to say. And I'm like, no, I want to know what you would tell them. And I said, no, I won't critique it. And then, of course, 2 seconds into it, I started saying something, Jess, and I'm like, just kidding. I said, but I wanted to know really, like, what would you tell that person? Like, what would you tell the person? And if you were just talking to yourself, right? What would you tell yourself if you were overwhelmed, stressed about the new year, or concerned about hitting your goals, or will you earn enough money, or will you find the right relationship? Will you heal from your tragedies? Will you make your mark? Will you accomplish what you want? I mean, whatever it is that's coming at you, what advice would you give to that person? Now ask yourself that question. What advice would you give to them? Would it be just a pat on the back? Oh, you're going to be okay. It's going to be good. You'll be fine. Like, really, what would you tell them? If you were really going through that, what would you tell yourself? What do you tell yourself? How do you manage your anxiety? How do you manage your pressure? How do you manage the stress? How do you manage the disappointments? How do you manage the anxiety that sometimes seems so crippling when things aren't exactly the way either you want them to be, need them to be, would desire them to be? How do you handle that? How do you handle things with your health? Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's your most intimate relationship that struggles. And maybe it's your business where you are so much wanting something to be different, the way your business is going. And yet you find yourself so stuck, paralyzed, fearful, stressed out. How do you get past that? And what advice would you give yourself or to someone else? And so I want to talk about that. And by the way, she gave a brilliant answer. And we'll just start with number one, which was, this was the first thing that she said. She said, I would have them tell me the story they're telling themselves. So here's the antidote. What is this? What's your story? We say, well, what if I like my story? You know what? Sometimes we like to feel miserable. Sometimes we want to be down and out. Sometimes we want to feel all that we feel. We want a moment for that. But if you turn that moment or that day or that week into a lifetime of frustration, anger, and depression and stress, that's a major problem. So as you're moving through your life, just ask yourself again, how am I handling this? And how am I messaging the story that I tell myself? Now, here's the deal. There's good stories that empower you. So if it's a story that you're telling yourself about how great you are, how you're going to accomplish this, how you can overcome, how you can persevere, then live in that story. But if your story is about, why is this always happening to me? How come I can't figure this out? You know what? It's their fault. It's his fault. It's her fault. And if all of a sudden you choose a story that is blame and victimization, and you start moving and maneuvering a story that basically doesn't build you, excel you past all of the crazy noise, right? Is your story, I'm too young? Is your story, I'm too old? Is your story, I just can't figure it out? It's just not me. What is the story that you're telling yourself? Because if you can figure out that story and tell yourself a story of your triumph, and tell a story of what you choose to accomplish, and a story that you say, this is my new story. And the fact is, if you can tell yourself a new story, every single thing that you want to have happen will come together. It's just the story we choose to tell ourselves. You are the replication of your story. Remember that. If you are overweight, it's the story you've told yourself. It's the story. I was with my coach yesterday. I said these words, my concussion has really been tough on me. It's affected my health. And she said, well, that's an interesting story. I'm like, well, but it's just a story. She goes, I'm not telling your story's wrong, but it is an interesting story. And it is a story. It's a story that I've told myself. And it made me feel good. And it served me. I can tell you today, it doesn't serve me. That's not the story I want. I don't feel any effects right now of my concussion. I'm feeling great. So now what's my story? I feel great, and let's go exercise. Let's eat right. Let's do the right things, because that's my story. And you can change your story anytime. And sometimes we think we can't ever change our belief. We can't ever change the path we're going down. And yet you can change any belief like that. I've always had this belief, by the way, in this arena, and some of you certainly have heard this from me before, but your belief is the starting point, guys. What do you believe, right? You've heard me say, I am the best agent for the job. I believe I can get the job done. I believe I can sell the home, help them find the home. That's your belief. Then somebody says, well, that's just who I am. That's what I believe. Just the best question I ever asked myself, I think it's got to be like in my top 5 questions ever asking myself, which is, if no one told me what to believe, what would I believe? Think about all the things you've been taught over your life, all the well-intentioned people, all the people who loved you, adore you, have cared for you. And they said, this is what we believe. But do you believe that? It's okay if you do or don't. I just want to make sure you believe what you believe. Because beliefs are everything. And if you can change your beliefs in regards to a religion, right? You can change your beliefs spiritually. You can change your beliefs politically. Oh, heavens, change your mind in politics. You can't change your mind. Well, yeah, but I believed that when I was in my 20s. Now I'm 50. No, you change your belief. We can't vote for you. Think about people who are scrutinized and absolutely ostracized because of the change of their belief. Just think about that. Can you get clear on what you believe? because your beliefs always spur to this, the way you think. Or you might put down the way your thoughts. And I know it's just, this is about this is about a year of being aware, being conscious, being aware of what's going on, being mindful. Kind of like that moment, like, does anybody remember that summit where I kept slamming my hands together and saying, wake up? Because the thing is that we are walk through life not even realizing what we believe, but then our beliefs channel us into the way we think, and our thinking turns into the way that we feel. And again, this isn't a new concept. Don't shut down, think, oh, I've heard that. Think about this. What is it that you're believing? What is it you're thinking? What do you feel? Right now, what are you doing, or how are you acting? Well, that equals the results of your life. You. Well, I'm just not that way. That's just not me. I'm just not an outgoing person. Then why are you in real estate? I don't really like people. You might consider another job, right? I mean, you're like, well, but I really like brick and mortar. No one cares how much you know about a house. That's the job of the inspector. Your job is to be an extraordinary communicator. So the question, again, I go back to, what is your belief in anything in your life? Again, what do you believe? If no one told you what to believe, what do you believe? How about an even more scary question? If you were willing to ask yourself any question in your life because you were totally okay with any of the answers, would you ask? That's the thing I watched myself, certainly, especially in my 20s and 30s, I'd be afraid to ask a question with myself. What if that's not true? Whatever it is. What if what my dad said, my mom said? What if what my best friend what if that isn't true, what they said? Or what I read, or what I saw? I mean, it was on the internet, it must be true. Right? Okay? So just look, this is about formulating this belief, is about shaping a story through your thoughts and your feelings so that you act out and bring the life that you want. So if you believe that you can sell 100+ homes a year, if you think that you can, then you'll start thinking it, feeling it, acting upon it, and you'll most likely get there. But if you all of a sudden believe that that's not who you are, and you believe that you aren't that person, whatever that number is, whatever that income is, whatever you try to create, then you'll get that. You get exactly. You are the author of your story. And your life is a replication of the story you tell yourself. So man, if there's any time to like wake up and be conscious and be aware, kind of ask yourself, you got to ask yourself, what am I believing? What is my story? Because if you don't figure that part out, man, you're going to just repeat an old story, man, a nightmare, a splatter of like, on the tomato, what is that? What is that tomato thing? The story, the movie, what is it called? Rotten Tomatoes, right? The splat.
I don't think I've ever seen that one.
You haven't seen the Rotten Tomatoes website? You not ever go see movies? You're not interested in anybody else's opinions? Come on, Dick. Anyways, do we know what Rotten Tomatoes is at least? Okay, all right. Half of the group. All right. It's the Siskel and Ebert of movies, I guess, but computer wise. John.
So as you share your story of your concussion, provide comfort and the experiences I've had when I had to change my stories, what I've realized is a story can either give us comfort, or if we change it, then it can give us freedom to move forward.
Very much so.
It cannot do both.
Yeah. Because everything you want, right? Is outside your comfort zone.
Right. So an easy way to see if you have a good story or not is to ask yourself, is it providing comfort or freedom to move forward?
Ooh, I like that. It's great, John. Well said. Love that. Okay. With that being said, let's start to the next point. Like these are just getting helps for 2022. So next, journal writing. Gosh, some of you are writing your journals right now. But if you don't have a journal, people have asked me, what are the most important things you've done to eliminate chaos, bring clarity, to reduce the chaos in my head, the stress, the fear? It has been my journal. So look, write in your journal. Now, this is the thing that's interesting about journal writing. People say, well, why am I going to write in it? And they say, well, I'm not really into that. And that's your story. maybe a better story might be better, but the story is interesting because it then stops you from doing so. But my journal became the most important thing for 2 or 3 reasons. Here's the first one. I wanted to ask myself questions. And some of you have heard this, but it started with Kenzie when I was a brand new father. And I remember I'm like, I'm not really liking this, how I'm jamming as a dad. And so I wrote down on a yellow pad of paper on the airplane. I started like literally tears started streaming. I still remember the flight attendant coming up to me going, "Are you okay, sir?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay." Just bawling my eyes out because of Kenzie. I'm just kidding. Right. And I was writing down and reflecting on who I was being and who I wanted to become. And so I wrote down this question: who do I want to become as a father? And that was what started my journal writing. Yeah, I'd written in my youth a little bit in my journal here and there, but not with any real purpose. So my journal became a place where I started to ask myself questions. I started to ask myself questions like, what type of business do I want to create? What type of leader do I need to become? I started using words that always started with how, when, and what. You'll never see in my journal as to why is this always happening to me? Because there is no solutions in that. But when I ask myself, what has to happen to make this different? Or who do I have, or another way I also, here, we'll put this one here. Who do I have to become? What must I do? When will I make this happen? How will I make this happen? Then all of a sudden, when I'm asking questions, like if I want to put 50 loans a month together, right? Sounds pretty good for you, Jim, right? Great. Then I'd ask the question, how do I accomplish that? And so my journal became a place where I still will never forget, here Rick Davidson, one of our dear friends, comes in and he's like, "Hey, so you built this monstrosity of a company. How did you do that?" And I remember, I mean, you may remember this, Johnny, held up my journal. I says, "It's right here." And he's all, "What do you mean it's right there?" I go, "It's in my journal." He goes, "You hand wrote like everything?" "Pretty much." Sometimes I'd screenshot it and send it to Gretchen and say, "Can you put that in a spreadsheet for me? Can you put this down in some bullet points for me and just leave it on my desk?" And everything that I created and everything I still create today, I'm creating it inside my own head and writing it in my journal. And I get really clear in my journal as to where I'm going. And almost every single day, I write down where I'm going. So let's go to number 2. All right. So number 1 is answering questions. Number 2 is I'm always defining where I'm going. These are the key things I do with my journal. I said 2 or 3. I know I'm jumping around a little bit. I apologize, but just writing questions in your journal. Number 2 in your journal, clearly defining where you're going. Where are you going? Right? How much money are you going to earn? Over and over again. Do you know how many years, Pim, I wrote down that I would own a title company? Do you know how many? You don't know, do you? I've never told you this.
I'm gonna go with 11.
Right about that, because it was when it got really a conversation I had with one particular individual who said, "You'll never be in that." I'm like, "Whoa, what?" And I started writing down almost daily title, mortgage, real estate. And I just made it so clear as to where I was going. And I remembered that the moment that I forget, I'm going, like the key to poor decision making is what? Not knowing where you're going. And if you don't know where you're going, you're going to make dumb decisions like, do you want to go to Starbucks or prospect? Because you don't know why you're prospecting. So you're like, Starbucks sounds great. That's what happens. Because the fact is you don't know where you're going. But when you're absolutely clear that today I will do this, today I will accomplish that, because this year I will do this, because my ultimate goal is that. And so over and over and over again, people say, "Well, how have you accomplished it?" Because I know where I'm going. There's rarely a day in my life that I don't know what I'm trying to achieve. I'm not saying there's never, but they are more rare than the days that I know where I'm going. I know and I feel it. And when I'm disconnected to it, then I ask this question: what's important about it? When I'm disconnected to my prospecting, my recruiting, my building, I ask a better question. I say, what's going to get me connected? And what gets me connected is, what's important about achieving that? What's important about that money? What's important about 50 loans a month for Jim? I like that number. I'm going to keep that number for you. All right. But my point is what's important about it? Because if I sat down with Jim and said, what would be important about doing 50 loans a month with you and your team? You personally, like your team, not the whole company, you, what would you tell me?
Why it's important?
Yeah, I would say what's important about it, but that's fine. Why?
I think it would be important for a lot of reasons, right?
Here's the first problem. I mean, this is if
Yeah.
but he doesn't even know why, because he's never even thought to say, I'm gonna do 50 loans a month. Have you thought about doing 50 loans a month?
No.
No point, because he's telling himself a story of how many. So you do exactly the story you tell yourself, and that's not a criticism. You do a ton of business, but I'm telling you, you, any of you, some of my closest friends are in this room today. You do exactly what you tell yourself you're going to do. That's how much money you earn. That's how many deals you do. That's how many recruits you recruit. That's how many, it's all about what you continue to tell yourself. So what is your goal this year per month?
Personally,
Yeah.
just, that's a good question. I'm trying.
You're killing me,
define-
Smalls.
Well, so-
Killing me.
With my role.
You're killing me.
Am I managing more or am I focused on?
Well, I don't know, Art. That's why you're supposed to be writing in your journal.
So I do.
Okay, what is, oh,
Yeah, personally.
okay, we got it out of there, Jessica. 10
Should I
personally.
do 20 or 30? Yeah, but I think I want to focus more of that time managing, coaching, mentoring, helping our team. So could I
Okay,
do more? I probably could.
well, do you want to do more?
Sure.
Well, then why aren't you?
I'm just trying to make sure I don't leave.
I mean, I get it,
help
you
my
should have
team.
your stewardship.
Yeah.
Okay.
Story.
Sure, well, I have a story. Just the other question is the story serving Jim. Jim's never gonna come to a morning and send or anywhere I am ever again. I always pick on someone and then there's people who never does that. Okay, so you're gonna close 120 loans personally this year.
Yes.
Okay, I like that. And your team will close how many this year?
We want to get, I mean, the team, so I'd have to break down the math.
Yeah, why don't you
I
know
have
what?
to-
How about
so-
this? The
so
next
we
time
want
I
the
see
team
you,
to
you
do
tell
100
me.
million. Well, that would be the bare minimum, 100 million.
Oh,
Okay,
Utah team.
okay. So 120 loans for Jim, 100 million. For the team.
The team to do it.
Okay, so now in your journal, you should be writing down what? The goal, and now what?
How am I gonna do it? And that we define that, like, okay.
Yeah, but you should define it almost every day.
What kind
Oh,
of
really?
person?
Seriously? Like, that's what I'm trying to say is the moment you're disconnected and you don't know exactly what you're supposed to be doing, then that's the moment you come back and go, hey, what's important about bringing in those recruits? What's important about doing those loans? What's important about doing another transaction? Because the moment you forget, you will show up at Starbucks, IHOP, have the chocolate chip pumpkin pancakes over the original right? I mean, Aaron knows what I'm talking about. You like those pancakes, right? You go to the original pancake house, and all of a sudden you're like, because have you ever noticed that in offices where no one's showing up, you know what the reality is? People aren't just showing up. Oh, let's hold a party. That's not why people show up in the office. You either have an environment that is set up to prospect or it's not. And what's real clear is that when people aren't showing up, it means they don't even know where they're going. They're just letting whatever's happening happen, meaning that they didn't get any better. The market just got better. Think about that. The market got better. They didn't. Some of you have done a lot more business this year. Just at least be honest with yourself. Was it the market driven or did you really get better? Really kind of interesting to think about. Yes, you do an extraordinary amount of business. I'm incredibly grateful and proud of you, but just seriously, internally for your own self, ask yourself, are you really getting better? Because here's the thing I know, Jim, and it applies to everybody. I mean, they think I'm just talking to you, but I'm actually talking to everybody here. Right, Mike?
Yes.
And that is oh yeah, there we go. Nice by there, okay? And that is that you have all the solutions inside of you already for 100 million, for 120. What's your goal this year?
60
60 what?
personal.
And then team?
200.
200? Look how clear she was. She was like, oh man, I'm not gonna get caught in that web. All right. So every day you should be writing down what?
Where I'm going
Yeah, I'm serious. So every day in your journal, this is what I do. I'm just only giving you my personal experiences. I'd be writing 120 and 100 million every single freaking day. Every day. And when I found myself disconnected, I'd say, what's important about that? So what is important about that?
You know, the idea is to create something personally, right? That's a huge accomplishment, a great accomplishment, but also, I think more importantly, helping our team. You know, that's really important to me, is making sure our team is successful, that they're healthy when it comes to their business, right? It's a big deal.
Okay. Are you running for office?
No, no.
Because that sounds so politically correct. Okay, could you just say, like, here's the thing I've realized, truth is concise and clear and has very few words to it. Why do you want this? I want to hear things like, I want to be rich, or I want to buy, or I want to have, or I want to achieve. Like, get really clear. So what does that much business do for you?
Yeah, it allows me to, you know, pay off debt, you know.
Okay. That is like the most boring answer that I have ever.
Pay off my mortgage.
I am so motivated, $100 million in volume. I'm gonna close 120 deals so I can pay off debt. What the hell are we talking about here, Jim?
What the hell we're talking about?
I want to know.
You're so greedy that you don't want to have it because it makes you feel guilty.
Now I've got coach. I got the assistant coach. She's probably the head coach, right? But whatever you want to call it.
I don't know if I'm not, sorry guys, I'm not motivated by cars. I don't know.
I don't need you to have a car. That's because you've never driven a real nice one. But that's a whole other conversation. Okay.
Let's go to Europe this year.
What?
Let's travel to Europe or.
Well, let's or are we?
We are going to.
Yeah.
Okay, where are we going?
We're gonna go, let's think about this. We're gonna go to Hawaii.
I know we're all going to Hawaii on April 1st.
And then I would love to go to, families to Paris and Rome.
You'd like to or you are?
I'm going to, gosh damn it.
Okay. That was close. One year.
This is done to all of us, Jim, don't worry.
I'm just saying that, okay, so we're going, are we going?
Let's go.
I'll go.
Okay, let's go.
When?
I'm in.
Notice I said when. I don't know, you finally got to the point of certainty. Does everybody believe we're going to Paris? Who believes we're going to Paris? Aaron, you going to Paris? You're not going, but you think he's going? Oh, you don't yet? Huh? No, do you think he's going?
Oh, yeah, I believe it.
Okay, that's why I'm more concerned that you believe. So we're going to Paris when? And I can go with by when?
By the end of summer, or early fall, by then, right? Before, let's say, let's say before November 1st.
By when?
Before November 1st.
November 1st.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to Paris?
Mhm.
Has Lindy been to Paris?
Yes.
Has your family been to Paris?
Kids have not. Kids have not.
Okay.
So.
Well, I just texted your wife.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm in my journal, I didn't realize that half my time was gonna be on the journal with Jim, but I'm gonna be writing down the fact that I'm gonna 100 million, 120, right? I'm gonna write that every day. And I'm gonna write down, I might even just trigger taking the family to Paris. I might just write Paris. And then I'm going to say when, and I'm gonna put down by when, November when?
November 1st.
First, which year?
2022.
Okay, just checking. Okay, and then you probably know who are you gonna take?
The fam.
Okay. You know what the most important things to me is? You said cars. It's actually not cars, even though I like driving nice cars. It is this. It is, Jennifer, would you like to, she always says, Amy, she said, I'm the hardest person to buy for. What is my rules? These are my rules. This is my story, guys, by the way.
Memorable, meaningful, and adventurous.
Love it.
Paris could be all those things for you.
Absolutely.
Meaningful, an adventure, right? And a memory that will last a lifetime, right?
That's exactly how I feel. Honestly, that's perfect.
Watching my kids watch through Thanksgiving, walking through Normandy, watching Bella, who's just turned 15, on the beaches of Normandy, watching her stand where 350,000 men and women died. I will never forget those moments, and they don't either.
Love it.
Now they're like trying to ramp it up and going, where are we going next?
My wife's calling me.
I bet. All right. Okay. So my point to all of this, gang, is that look, this is why I love my journal. I write questions as to what I want my life to be and how I want it to be. I write down my goals, my dreams. I write down my obsessions. Very rarely, if I'm in a bad space, I write down how to get out of that space. I use my journal as one of the single most important places to express myself, to talk to myself, to clarify in my own self what I want and where I'm going. Because otherwise I make bad decisions. Your number one job as a parent is to make sure your kids know where they're going. Because if they know where they're going, they make good decisions. If they don't know where they're going, I have two teenager sons, they sit down and all they do is they play video games, they eat Cheetos, drink Mountain Dew, and do nothing. Like I watched myself in fury pulling in my garbage cans last night at 11 p.m. waking up all the neighbors because they were already thinking they were asleep. And then I found out, guess what they were doing? Playing video games. Because that's what they'll do when they don't know where they're going. So your job is to remind them to never forget. But just because you became an adult doesn't mean you're going to remember. Okay, and then the last thing I just want to finish up with, if you're not doing this, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Gosh, I'd highly encourage you guys. I mean, look, we have such a cool thing happening. Where is it? It's probably up here somewhere, but Climb that's happening. Where is it? Oh, right there. Okay, guys. I mean, we're going to spend 25th, 26th, 27th. If you haven't heard Luke Wren speak, he's the right hand of Tony Robbins, one of my favorite speakers. He's my personal coach today. I visit with him every single week. We've got Colton Lindsay coming from WGR. We've got Louis Hammer coming in and doing some breath work. We've got a whole sort of things that are happening to just simply build a better life for you to start the year with. But one of the most important skills that I've learned in my lifetime, and I am obsessed with it, is meditating. And I just can tell you that if you were to master the story, if you were to exchange gratitude, expectations for gratitudes, if you were so clear on where you were going, you used your journal this year as a tool like you've never done before. And if you meditated, man, how powerful your world could be. Just want to remind you, what is meditation? It's about a fixation of the future, where most people live in fear and live in the past. They always look back at the past. Meditation, you don't meditate and go, okay, let me meditate. Okay, all right, connect to your heart. Okay, now let me relive all the most horrific moments of my life. No, that's not what you meditate about. When you meditate, you are casting forward the future, a prediction of the future. You're starting to create a whole different mindset for what the future holds. So take the time to either do guided meditation. Take time when you're totally on your game to do personal self-guided meditation. It doesn't matter. I do both all the time. But take the time to truly meditate. Get yourself into a center, to find your center so that you're in that confidence, that belief, and that internal structure that allows you to believe that you can accomplish anything. And will there be days where you feel high and days you feel low? Yes. But one of the most important things, and I wish I would have known this, because I did not use meditation for nearly the last decade, except for the last year and a half. And it was my concussion that every one of the doctors said, I need you to meditate. I need you to meditate. And so whether it's a 2-minute meditation, which do exist on YouTube, by the way, even 1-minute meditations, when I'm like, and look, if you don't have 1 minute, you might be packing your world a little too tight. I'm just telling you. Okay, so, I mean, you could pack in a 1-minute meditation. Ruby, can you do a 1-minute meditation at least? All right, there's all the science that says you should do about 17 to 18 minutes a day. And that is the perfect optimal. And there's truly restructuring of your brain during those times. But I would just encourage you to recognize the stresses of life are real. I get that. The disappointments, the frustrations, the anxiety of accomplishment, achievement, the what ifs. And if you could just use your journal, if you could exchange it into gratitude at moments in regards to your thinking and expectations. And if you could control and get really clear on what you believe, using that journal to do so, and you use meditation, man, there's like nothing about this business you can't do. So come be the person you're supposed to be, right? Rise up through all of that and use the tools that are available to you. I really don't believe there's lazy people. I'm a firm believer there's just not unresourceful people. And yet you have resources like your journals, meditation, breath work, all sorts of things you can do to find that center, to be the person optimally in your health, your relationships, and your business that you're supposed to be, your destiny. But if you choose to be unresourceful and not use the resources, then the game will just repeat itself because you are the author of your story. And your story is a reflection or is reflected in the life that you live. And even though your story may be true, it still may not change anything for you if you don't change the story, because that is where the changes will begin to occur. Guys, you guys are great. Happy New Year. Have an extraordinary year. Thank you for being here. And let's go kick butt and take names, guys. Hey.